Good afternoon, dear teachers. We want to thank you so much for joining this session. But before we begin, may I ask any volunteer to raise up your hand to lead us in a word of prayer? Any volunteer who wants to lead us in a word of prayer, kindly raise up your hand and then you lead us in a word of prayer. Any teacher that is willing to lead us in a word of prayer, you can have your hand raised and then you lead us in that prayer. We shall unmute you. Okay. So we can humble ourselves and we pray. Lord Jesus, we want to thank you for the gift of life. We want to thank you for bringing us together as a team of teachers from the different parts of the country, from the different schools. We want to ask you to bless us that as we go in for this session, to learn more on how we can assess the generic skills, you may help us to understand everything that our facilitator is going to take us through. You may help us to put into action all what we shall be able to learn in this session. Help us that you may enable our networks to be stable such that we can be able to listen in without any interruptions. We make this through Christ our Lord. Amen. So thank you so much, everyone. I want to welcome you once again and to thank you so much for keeping time to be here on this Zoom session such that we can learn together as a team. We have been able to disable some features, and therefore in case of any question, we shall use the chat, or you can raise up the hand and then we shall be giving you an opportunity for you to be able to ask any question that you may be having concerning the generic skills. We know very well that generic skills are very crucial in the new curriculum, but also in the world of work. When you go outside, you'll find yourself utilizing all these skills that we shall be learning, or that our learners in senior one or those ones doing the new curriculum are supposed to possess. Therefore, these skills are very crucial, and therefore we must start imparting them into our learners as early as possible. But what is very important today is how are we going to assess, or how are we supposed to assess these skills in the new curriculum? So that is the main reason why we are here. We want to learn how do we teach and how do we assess? How do we find out that this learner has attained this skill? And therefore, that is why we are here. We want to welcome you once again. We want to welcome all the different officials. We are supposed to have some officials from the Ministry of Education, but they will be joining us at a later time. Thank you so much, and allow me now to welcome our facilitator, Teacher Arthur Kugonza, to start us off. Teacher Arthur, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kaziba Stephen. Good afternoon, dear teachers. I hope we are doing well, and I hope we are making full use of our holiday before the term starts. Planning everything, and also looking for new information, more so on the challenge ahead us of the new curriculum. The new curriculum has now come. It is there to stay. Last year, we only had 3 classes. Now we have 4 O-level classes. Some of our teachers were hiding in only O-level, sorry, in only senior 4, think that maybe they will run away from the new curriculum. But now, this year, no one is escaping it, no one. All of us have to accept that the new curriculum has come. We do whatever is necessary to see that we keep up to the task, the new curriculum, which is very, very demanding. So I want straight away to go into my presentation. For purposes of focusing, I'll sometimes try to switch off or to disable my video at times. So allow me share the screen or the document that I'm going to be presenting. Okay, I hope now the screen is coming through full. So let me hide the video. Okay, so here we are. So we're going to be looking at how to teach and assess the generic skills in the new lower secondary curriculum. And my name is teacher Arthur Gonza. Specifically, I specialize in teaching biology. I'm a teacher of biology. So I think that also currently I'm based at St. Mary's College, Chisubi. That is where I'm based at. What are these generic skills that we are talking about? You know, it is always important that before we do something, we have to first understand what it is, because it is in that understanding what it is where we get to know what actually we are dealing with. It has never been more important to build a set of essential skills to succeed in life of our learners and also the young people. And the ability to creatively solve problems, things like how to self-manage, things like how to communicate effectively, things like how to work well with others. All these are the skills that are needed in almost anything that we do if we are to do it very well. You cannot be called a good teacher if you're not a good problem solver. You cannot be called a good teacher if you cannot self-manage. You cannot be called a good teacher if you cannot communicate effectively, or even if you can't work well with others. So the need for these skills is very clear to everyone, but there is still a gap. Many of our graduates or many of our learners do not get the chance to build these skills to the level that they need. And in the end, they end up missing out on opportunities to thrive in other parts of their lives. And these skills have been in existence. They have been there. Ever since the 19th or even the 20th century, they have been there. Only that what has been changing is the names that they have been calling them. Some have been calling them employability skills. Others have been calling them generic skills. Others have been calling them 21st century skills. Others, soft skills, core skills, transferable skills, all those are names that have been used to describe what we call the generic skills. And these generic skills lie at the heart of every subject, where they can enable a learner to access and deepen learning across the whole curriculum. These same skills that are sought by employers, these are the same skills that are sought by the employers, and it is hoped that they will help unlock world of work. They'll also help make our graduates or our learners competitive globally in the work market. And also, these same skills, they allow our young people develop into lifelong learners who can adapt to change and cope with the challenges of life in this 21st century. So therefore, to us as educators or to us as facilitators, we have to change our mindset. We have to change the mindset so that it can shift from content to generic skills. Now, there hasn't been any uniform way of teaching these skills, because it is clear that these skills have to be attained from schools. And by the time a learner graduates, they must be having these skills. So there hasn't been any clear or uniform or systematic way in which teachers are teaching these skills, how they assess their acquisition, and also how they report them to the stakeholders. These skills have to deliberately be taught and assessed in the learners. You don't have to appear like you're spying on the learner. At the end of the day, or at the end of the term, or even at the end of the year, you find a learner finds a comment on the report card that so and so is not a good communicator, or so and so is not a good speaker or a good listener. And the learner is caught surprised. What do you mean when you say I'm not a good speaker? What do you mean when you say I'm not a good communicator? For you to say, no, in classes, you've not been doing that. So how would the learner have known that now the teacher is assessing me in this skill? So it means that in most cases, instead of teaching learners and assessing them genuinely, we end up spying on them. You spy on them. Is this learner creative? Is this learner a problem solver? Is this learner so and so? And you end up reporting. So when we are looking at these things, we shouldn't appear to be spying on the learners. And each learner has to get the support that they need individually. So there is a skills builder universal framework, a universal tool for educators to teach and develop these skills in the learners. You can access it from this website, skillsbuilder.org. That's how you can access it. So we are going to see how can we merge our generic skills in the new curriculum to the generic skills in the skills builder framework. How can we do that? So what does this skills builder framework do? This skills builder framework, it breaks down the skills into steps. If it is problem solving, so it breaks down the problem solving into small teachable steps. And these small teachable steps then are the ones that you teach, and at the end of the day, assess whether learners have achieved these steps. But also take note that also our syllabus book also breaks down the wider generic skills into steps. But however, it does not guide on how to teach these steps and when to teach them. So the skills builder, the steps in the skills builder, they show a progression roadmap to developing the generic skills right from P1 right through university. Can you imagine that these skills have been taught from senior 1 up to university? So now, if our curriculum can be realigned right from P1 up to university, by the end of the whole education cycle at university, we shall be having a learner or a graduate who is actually competitive in the work market globally. Though it is not clear whether in primary they are doing the rightful thing to teach these learners these skills. So this is how the skills builder breaks down the skills and how we can map them with the skills that we have in our syllabus book. So in our syllabus book, we have 5 skills in our syllabus book. We have 5 skills. There is critical thinking and problem solving. There is creativity and innovation. There is communication. There is cooperation and self-directed learning. There is mathematical computations and ICT proficiency. So these are the skills that are shown in our syllabus book. And these are the skills that you'll have to be reporting to your name. Mind you, these skills, it is you, the facilitator, that has to assess them and report to your name whether each learner or each individual has shown or has demonstrated mastery or attainment of these skills. So that system is coming. I'm sure through your ears or through your flies on the walls, you must have heard that your name is somehow working on continuous assessment, things of project work, things of activities of integration. So that is where they intend to incorporate these dynamic skills. So for you, the educator, at the end of every project report, a learner hands in, you'll have to assess whether they demonstrated these dynamic skills, and then you report them to your name. Then your name will capture them, and at the end of the cycle, they'll have to find a way of how these skills will have to be reflected on the final certificate of education of the learner. And we shall see that most of these skills actually, they can be assessed through observation. So your name may not come to school to see whether these learners are actually demonstrating these skills, but they'll be relying on you, the facilitator or the educator, to report objectively and subjectively on these skills. So then how do these skills appear in the skills builder framework? So for critical thinking and problem solving, we shall learn to teach it as problem solving from the skills builder framework. For creativity and innovation, it is there as creativity. For communication, communication involves speaking and listening. So the skills builder framework breaks them down into speaking and also listening. Then cooperation and self-directed learning. So this cooperation and self-directed learning, the skills builder framework breaks it down into 4 components. There is teamwork. So you have to teach learners what teamwork is and how can they show teamwork, or how can they develop the skill of teamwork. There is leadership. It is aiming high. It is staying positive. So that is how the skills builder framework divides the cooperation and self-directed learning in our syllabus book. Then the mathematical computations and ICT proficiency. This one is not part of the skills builder framework. But however, we shall also see how can we teach it? How can we teach this generic skill in the learners, and how can it be assessed? How then do we teach? In order to have an impact, the skills have to be developed with consistency and focus. So if you have to develop these skills in the learner, you have to be consistent and you have to be focused. And these are some of the principles that you have to be having at the back of your mind before you prepare yourself to teach a given generic skill. That for every skill that you're going to teach, you should keep it as simple as possible. Then you have to start early and keep going. If you are to teach the skill maybe of listening, a step of listening, you have to start as early as first term. Then you keep on moving, you keep on going. Then it has to be measurable. You have to measure the level of attainment of a given skill. And this measuring can be done through observation, self or peer assessment. Then you have to focus tightly onto the skill. If you enter into a class and you say, today we are going to focus ourselves on this skill, then focus tightly onto only that one skill. Do not mix up. 1 minute in the introduction, you're talking about communication. Then later, you're now talking about teamwork. Then later, you're also talking about leadership. You confuse things. There, you are not showing consistency and focus. Then also, you have to keep practicing it with your learners. They have to keep practicing. That is, you can now know that now, indeed, they have actually mastered this skill. And also when you're teaching it, you also have to bring it to life. You have to bring it, make it lively. Let the learners see the importance or the role of this skill in their life. If I'm to be a good speaker, what is the relevance of being a good speaker in life? So, also, sorry, let me try to collapse this. Okay, just a moment. I want to see how I can collapse this bar so that my titles can be visible. Okay, so I hope to you there it is coming through. So how do we now teach these skills? We are now done with the introduction. How do we teach these skills? So they are saying that each skill is broken down into 16 steps. They are numbered from step 0 up to step 15. Then these skills are supposed to be taught right from primary 1, starting with step 0 up to university. So by the up to university, you're still learning these skills. If you say that a P1 kid is a good listener, the qualities of a good listener you expect from a P1 kid can't be the same qualities of a good listener you expect from a university graduate. There must have to be some advancement in the graduate than in the P1 people, for instance. So this, the first skill reported in our syllabus book is the skill of communication. So we have now started the communication skill. Now, how are we going to teach this communication to the learners? In that by the time they finish senior 4, we can comfortably say that so-and-so is a good communicator. So for us to be able to teach it, the skills builder framework breaks it down into 2, listening and speaking. A good communicator is a good listener and a good speaker as well. So it means that learners have to be taught how to listen and how to speak. So our Ugandan curriculum breaks down the skill of communication into these 5 components. And these are the components that you'll have to report to UNEB in project work or in continuous assessment. These are the ones you'll have to report to UNEB. But however, for you, the teacher, you have to go through the other steps in the skills builder framework to be able to teach this skill. In that, by the time the learners are presenting their project work, they'll just be seeing, have they achieved this? Have they achieved this? Have they achieved this? You report accordingly. So our Ugandan curriculum breaks down communication into listens attentively and with comprehension. So the question is, how do you teach someone to listen attentively? How do you do it? How do you teach someone to talk confidently and explain ideas or opinions clearly? How do you teach someone to read accurately and fluently? How do you teach someone to write and present coherently? How do you teach someone to use a range of media to communicate ideas? So here, things may not be so clear, but the skills builder now gives you now the steps that you can go through. For instance, if it is the skill of listening, remember now listening is coming from communication. We said that communication is divided into listening and speaking. So if it is listening, now these are the steps of listening. This is how you train a learner to be a good listener. In primary 1, these learners are taught that to be a listener, you must listen without interrupting. So these are the steps. This is how the skills builder framework breaks down the steps, sort of breaks down the skill of listening. And mind you, they are reported like this: I listen to others without interrupting, because it is these skills have to be developed within the learner. So the learner has to be confident, the learner has to be knowing that I'm a good listener because I listen to others without interrupting. I'm a good listener because I listen to others and can remember short instructions. So in primary one, they are taught that. Now, also remember that for any skill step, every skill step has a whole year of developing it in a learner. The whole of, meaning that now the whole of primary one, when it comes to listening, this is what they teach them. I listen to others without interrupting. At primary two, that is now step one. A learner listens to others and can also remember short instructions. In P3, I listen to others and can speak questions if I don't understand. So they go on like that. P7, I show I'm listening by how I use eye contact and body language in P7. Then now, when we now come to secondary, that is now step 7, senior 1. So senior 1, what does it mean to be a listener? In senior 1 is I show I'm listening by using open questions to deepen my understanding. That one there. That now a senior 1 learner should show that he is listening by using open questions to deepen their understanding. Then when they advance to senior 2, there, they can be able to demonstrate that they are listening by summarizing or rephrasing what they have heard. Then they advance to senior 3. I'm aware of how a speaker is influencing me through their tone. Then in senior 4, I'm aware of how a speaker is influencing me through their language. Then they move on like that, even A level. Remember this new curriculum, next year but 1, it will be rolled up in A level. So these skills will continue up to A level, even go up to university, up to step number 15. Now, how then do we teach the skill step 7 to a senior 1 learner? That now should be the question. How do I teach these senior 1 learners to use open questions to deepen their understanding in order to demonstrate that they have been listening, or in order to demonstrate that they are good listeners? How do you do that? At the end of the day, you know that when you have achieved these steps of listening, and when also they have achieved this step of speaking, then they are good communicators, like that. We shall come to speaking later. So now, I'm going to use the skill of listening as a case study of how you can interpret a skill step and how this skill step can be taught and how this same skill step can be assessed. Then for other generic skills, I may not go into the details of how to teach each step, assess it, and reinforce it. So I'm going to use the listening skill as a case study or as an example to show you how it is possible to teach learners the communication skills, teach learners how to be good speakers. So from the steps that we have seen, the 15 steps, if you can group them, you realize that from primary 1 up to primary 6, the learners are able, or a learner is able to listen, retain, and recall, and share what they have heard. from here, P1 to P6, this one shows that now the learner is able to retain information or recall it and also share it. That is all. That is what they have been developing at early stages. Then, in the intermediate years, then the learner is now able to demonstrate that they are now listening. Can they demonstrate that they are listening? And how can they demonstrate that they are listening? By using eye contact with whoever is speaking and other positive, encouraging body languages. Therefore, what does a teacher need to know? What does a teacher need to know? To teach any skill step or to teach any skill. The first thing that we should take note of is that each skill has to be deliberately taught. And when you're teaching a skill, you focus on the skill step. You don't focus on the step itself, on the skill itself. For instance, if it is listening skill, that is a skill. Now, when you're teaching, you focus on the step of that class, because senior 1, they are at one step, senior 2, they are also at another step. So you focus on the step for that particular class. And before you introduce your biology, before you introduce your English, before you introduce your chemistry, before you introduce your physics, the first thing to appear in your introduction of the lesson should be explaining the skill step to the learners. Remember, we said that we should now move away from focusing on content, but rather to focusing on the generic skills. So if you're going to teach maybe biology, soil erosion, the introduction shouldn't be about soil erosion. What is soil erosion? No. First, introduce the skill that your day's lesson is going to focus on too. Then when you introduce that skill, also introduce the skill step. Then when you introduce this skill step, then first explain this skill step to the learners that they can understand it. That even when they are now starting to present or to discuss your biology, they are able now to use that skill step to learn the biology, the chemistry, or the physics. Then the second thing a teacher has to take note of is that you should constantly remind learners about the skill step. The learners have to constantly be aware of the skill step. Don't spy on them. Don't spy on them. For instance, we've said that if you look at the listening skill, look at senior 1, where we said that the step is, I show I'm listening by using open questions to deepen my understanding. So the learners have to be aware that in today's lesson, whatever assignment they give us or whatever activity they give us, we have to be able to use open questions to deepen our understanding. The learners have to be constantly aware of this. If it is possible, you can even print these steps and have them pinned in the class. That learners are aware every day which skill they have to achieve by the end of the year. So you shouldn't appear to be spying on them. They have to be aware. Then the third thing that you have to take note of is that the teacher should select a learning outcome from the curriculum or from the syllabus book that adequately brings out the skill step A. If it is now that skill step 7 of senior 1, I show I'm listening by using open questions to deepen my understanding. Now, when you're going to teach, you first look at your learning outcomes. Then in these learning outcomes, you look at the kind of activities that you want your learners to do in order to achieve that learning outcome of your particular or of your subject. Then you ask yourself now, which generic skill fits in this learning outcome? Then if you get the generic skill that fits in that learning outcome, then you also ask yourself now, in this skill, does this skill step fit in this learning outcome? If it does, then now it means you have successfully now conformed your learning outcome to the skill step. Then you design activities focusing on that skill step. Towards the end of my slides, I have also prepared for you some sample lesson plans and some activities that show how these skill steps can be incorporated into our lesson plans, and also how these skill steps can be incorporated into the content as we are teaching. Then another thing that you have to be aware of is that the teacher should develop clear performance indicators, a clear scoring rubric, and also inform learners about what is expected of them. Now, you should get clear performance indicators. You should define clearly how are you going to assess this skill in the learners? How are you going to measure it? And also the learners have to be aware so that they can know what you expect from them. If you have given them an assignment, and in this assignment, they are going to, you're focusing on the other skill step of using open question to deepen their understanding, then you have to constantly engage the learners, or even the learners have to know that in whatever thing they are showing, they must be able to develop these questions so that they can deepen their understanding. Then also, the teacher should emphasize the skill step and not the skill itself. Emphasize the skill step and not the skill itself. If it is about listening, don't emphasize the listening skill, no. What you do, if it is a senior one, emphasize listening, showing that they are listening, using open questions to deepen their understanding. If it is a senior two, focus on them summarizing and rephrasing what they have heard. That is what you focus on. You don't focus on now the listening. Just focus on the skill step. Then also, for every skill step, a teacher has been knowing the meaning of all the terms used in the skill step. And therefore, you have to clearly explain them to the learners. Explain them to the learners. For instance, if you look at that skill step of senior one, using open questions, the learner will ask you, teacher, what is an open question? So you have to find out what are open questions, give learners examples of these open questions, that now they know what is an open question, what is a closed question, and in these presentations or in their discussions, constantly ask them, now, which open question have you found there? Which closed questions have you found there? Which ones do we want to use? Do you want to use open or closed questions? You have to find out all those, you as a facilitator. It is not easy, but if we keep practicing these things, and also if we accept that these things have come, the time things will come with ease. Then also, teachers also ought to make a deliberate effort to find out learners' ability in all the previous steps, and also encourage learners who are exhibiting steps above their expected class category. There will always be those learners who are gifted. They will always be there who are gifted. You find a senior one kid, but when it comes to listening, he's actually at the level of a senior 4 learner. He's already at step 10. Then you find another learner in senior 1, but when you try to look to interrogate or to find out their listening skills, you find that that learner is actually at the level of P6. I have interacted with many of even mature people who are still, when it comes to listening, they are still at the level of P1. What does the P1 skill say? P1, remember we said P1, someone to show that he's a good listener. I listen to others without interrupting. You talk to a person, you're talking, the person is interrupting. So it means that now that person, his listening skills are not yet developed. Maybe they miss that opportunity of learning that in school. They miss that opportunity. They miss the opportunity that when you're listening to someone, you don't have to interrupt. Something like that. Okay, so you have to, you as a teacher, you have to make a deliberate effort to find out from your learners at which level are they. And if you find this particular learner who is still behind, then you help that learner individually. You help him individually to make sure that he also reaches the level of his class. Then when you find that learner who is still exhibiting, skills way above his level, you don't discourage, you keep on encouraging him further. You keep on encouraging him. So let us now look at the nitty-gritties of each skill step. If you are to teach it, what do you have to be aware of? Remember, I've said that I will spend much of the time on the listening skill, that it can give us an idea, or it can help us know how to teach other skills. How to teach other skills. So now, step 7. We said step 7, this is now senior 1. So senior 1, learners have to go through this skill step. I show I'm listening by using open questions to deepen my understanding. So what does a learner have to go through to achieve this step? What they have to go through to achieve this step? So individuals will be able to use appropriate open questions to demonstrate that they are listening and to open up the conversation to learn more. So the question would be, what is an open question? So for you as a teacher, when you're preparing to go to class, first you have to first make research. What are these open questions? What are the examples of these open questions that I expect my learners to use? Then you look at your learning outcome. You look at your activities. Does this activity stimulate the use of these open questions? What are the examples of open questions that I expect to come from this given learning outcome? All that research, to do it. Then for step 8, remember we said that now this step 8 is for step 8 is now for senior 2. Now from senior 1, they have now shown that they can show they are listening by using open questions to deepen their understanding. Now in senior 2, they advance. I show I'm listening by summarizing or rephrasing what I have heard. So what does the learner have to go through to achieve this step? They'll have to show that they can demonstrate that they are understanding more complex ideas by repeating or rephrasing what they have heard. You've taken learners, senior 2 learners, maybe now here, when you're designing activities to develop this skill step, you can maybe take learners to a hospital. Maybe I want learners to find out the diseases, or maybe malnutrition deficiency diseases. So I can select a group from the class, I take them to a hospital, then they listen to a doctor. A doctor will tell them all the diseases, their effects, etc., depending on how they have designed my activity. Then now I task these learners to come back to class and report to their colleagues. So it means that now these learners, as they were listening to the doctor, they have been summarizing what they are hearing. And when they come now to report to the rest of the class, they'll have now to rephrase some statements. They may not have to report them exactly the way the doctor mentioned them, but they have now to do some rephrasing. So learners have to be briefed that now, today, we're going to learn about malnutrition deficiency diseases. And we're going to focus on our listening skill. So the listening skill step 8, showing this that you are listening by summarizing or rephrasing what they have heard. Then you give them an activity. So you're going to hospital, you listen to this and this person, or you're going to the field, or you're going to the, maybe arcade, anyway, depending on your subject. I want you to summarize what you're going to hear and rephrase it. So the whole year, you focus on that. If it is about listening, you focus on that for the whole year. Then when they now advance to senior 3, that now they will have gone to step 9. I'm aware of how a speaker is influencing me through their tone. Now they are now advanced. So here a learner will have to understand what is meant by tone. How does tone vary, and what are the impacts of the different tones of communicating? What are the impacts? So you look at the learning outcome that fit in some activities that you design. Then you task these learners to identify how someone can influence them through the tone that they are using. So as a teacher, you have now to go and research, what are tones? What are the different tones that exist? How can tone be used to distort the meaning of something? If someone says, may I come here? Then someone says, may I come here? So may you come here? Someone said, may I come in? Someone said, may I come in? So you see that those two things, the words are the same, but the tone is communicating otherwise. One is a polite request, another one is a harsh one. So you research about all those and see how to incorporate them into your lesson. Then in senior 4, they're now at step 10. I'm aware of how a speaker is influencing me through their language. So what do they go through to achieve this step? Now, individuals will now focus on how differences in the language that the speaker uses will influence the meaning of what they are saying, and also identify some common elements and how to interpret them. The language here. Now, as a teacher, you have to ask yourself, what are the different languages that are always used, that can be used to influence someone? Things like which language can a person use when they are joyous, when there is fear, when they are surprised, when they are disappointed, anger, all of those. This one now goes deep into even the emotions, history. CRE, I've seen topics there of maybe family, maybe losing someone. So if you task a learner to write a condolence message, then when they are conveying it, are they mindful of the language that they are using? In senior 4, for instance, if these learners are presenting in class and you've tasked them to, maybe the activity was write, I don't know if it can lie in English or maybe in CRE or even in history. The condolence message you would give to a colleague who has lost someone. Then someone is presenting it in front. Are they aware of the type of language that they have to use? And they also aware the influence the language has on someone? So all those skills you develop on them. Teach them the language tools that can influence a listener. As a teacher, research about them. Teach them those language tools. Teach them the wide range of emotions that one might feel at any time based on what they are hearing. When you're listening to someone, are you able to sense joy? Are you able to sense fear? Are you able to sense disgust? Are you able to sense anger? All of those skills you're teaching them, but through the content in your subject, So as a teacher, you have now to make all that research. You ask, what are these? How will they fit in my lesson? So Now, for instance, in senior 2, you're teaching them summarizing or rephrasing what they have heard. So how have they progressed? Because remember, this is just in senior 2. They have been moving right from primary. So if you're about to introduce this skill to them, how have they been progressing? Which skills they already have? We said that individuals should be able to show that they can demonstrate that they are understanding more complex ideas by repeating or rephrasing what they have heard, knowing that in step 6 and 7, that in senior 1 and P7, they were showing that they were listening by using eye contact, body language, and open questions. Now, step 8 now in senior 2 now goes further by now showing engagement with the content of what they are hearing itself. Because what you're hearing, now, how do you engage with it? Now, they should be able now to summarize, rephrase what they have heard. Now, this slide is a bit congested, but what I'm going to speak is one which is more important. So it means that now, for instance, if you're going to teach this skill step of summarizing or rephrasing, now you have to explain to the learners. You don't have to assume that they know, that learners know how to summarize, learners know what the meaning of the word rephrasing. You don't have to assume that. Explain to the learners, what does it mean when they say summarize? You can just give them brief conversations, then you ask them to summarize. Then you can also give them more concepts, then you tell them to rephrase. Maybe you can even start by asking them to rephrase the skill step itself in their own words. How can they do it? In most cases, when you are training our learners how to interpret questions, we even train them how to rephrase. That when you read the question, you rephrase it. Then when you rephrase it, then you get to understand it better. These are the skills, only that we've been teaching them passively. But now we have to do it deliberately, and the learners also have to be aware that in today's lesson, this is what is expected of me. I have to be able to listen, summarize, and rephrase what I have heard. Then, after teaching your skill, does it end there in that one lesson? One lesson is not enough. After all, you have ample time. You have a whole year teaching a skill step in each generic skill. A whole year is quite good time. So, for each skill step that you teach them, you have to keep on reinforcing, because we are humans. We forget, and we learn through repetition. So in preceding lessons or during regular lessons, you can keep on pausing some points and you ask learners to summarize what they have learned or heard so far, or to rephrase and demonstrate their understanding. So now this one will now come in other preceding lessons. After you have introduced your skill, you have taught them the skill step, then you have now to keep on reinforcing it so that they don't forget. Okay. How then do you assess it? How do you assess it in the learners? Remember, at the end of the day, you have to assess it. And the learners have to be aware that the teacher is now assessing me on this skill. At the end of the day, they should also be able actually to assess themselves that I'm there or I'm not yet there. Something is still lacking. So they're saying this step can be assessed through observation or deliberate activity. You can you can give them short statements, either verbally or in writing. Then you ask them to rephrase. You ask them to rephrase, or you ask them to summarize. Then you'll then check whether the learners can build or develop this naturally into the flow of a conversation. Because the idea is for this, remember these skills at the same time, they have to be to appear like they are coming out naturally out of the learner. So in the process of reinforcing an assessment, always keep on doing it so that you can see whether the learner can be able to develop it naturally in other conversations that may not even be related to the content that you're teaching them in class. So that is now the listening skill, the listening. Then what of speaking? Remember, speaking is also part of communication. Speaking. Now, we've so far seen that for you to be able to teach, we have seen that for each skill, it can be broken down in 2 steps, in 2 small teachable steps. And each class has a skill step that they have to learn and achieve. And for you to be able to teach each skill step to the learners, you have to first interpret the skill step to the learners, that they know the meaning of that skill step. And then you guide them on how now they can use it or incorporate it into the content. For instance, so we have now senior 1. What does it mean to be a good speaker? I speak engagingly using facts and examples support my points. So say maybe in the day's lesson, the learning outcome maybe is about maybe politics in the country. Politics in the country maybe, if it is maybe political education and history. So you task learners to make a presentation or maybe a debate on the nature of politics in the country. So if it is at senior 1 level, you task these learners to speak engagingly using facts and examples to support their points. What does it mean to speak engagingly? You interpret these learners that speaking engagingly means doing this and that. What does it mean when they say using facts? What are facts? What are examples? In that learners are now aware. Learners are aware that I'm standing in front, make my presentation, but I have to use the facts and I have to use examples to support my points. Then at the end of the presentation, you can even ask his colleagues to assess the learner, whether the learner was actually speaking engagingly, whether the learner used the facts, and whether the learner used the examples to support their points. So that is what it's all about. It is so simple if we get used to the skill steps. Then in senior 2, the learner is expected to be able to speak engagingly now using visual aids to support my points. Now, they now advance from the level of using mere facts and examples. Now they advance using visual aids. Now at senior 2 level, for you to be considered a good speaker, you should be able to speak engagingly using visual aids to support your points. Then at senior 3, I speak engagingly by using tone, expression, and gesture to engage learners. Now, they now advance to using tone, using expression, using gestures. Now, you have to teach these learners what are the different types of tones that they can use for them to be considered good speakers. What are those different types of tones? You make research as a teacher. You look for, information is everywhere. For instance, we know that things like tone, things like pitch, things like tempo. When you're speaking and you somehow increase your voice all of a sudden, what does it mean? If you're speaking and somehow you slow down your speech, what does it mean? Now there you're using tone to engage listeners. I've seen some teachers, when they are teaching in class and they see learners dozing, they increase the tone Yeah, what I'm saying is this. Then out of the blue, when you see the ones that were sleeping or the ones that were dozing, they get shocked and they wake up. So that is using tone to engage listeners. What does it mean when they say expression? Expression, face communication. How do you use the face? How do you use your body movements? Gesture. What is gesture? Movements. All those, you teach them and you demand them to display this when they are making presentations in class. You demand them to do that. You demand them to do it. Then in senior 4, they now again advance. I speak adaptively by changing my language, tone, and expression depending on the response of listeners. Depending on the response of listeners. Now here, the response of the listeners, you're addressing the class, you're making your presentation. Some members are dozing, others are showing that they're not paying attention. So at the level of senior 4, you should be able to know how are you going to use your tone, how are you going to use your expression, depending on the way the listeners are responding to you. So all those, you embed these into the day's activity and you demand them to demonstrate this step. You demand them to demonstrate it in class. And at the end of the day, you should be able to review and you tell them, okay, now you have presented. Have you been able to adaptively use language? Have you been able to adaptively change tone? Have you been able to adaptively change the expression depending on the response of the learners? If no, then where did you come short? Then they discuss, they brainstorm that maybe the presenter should have done this. The presenter should have maybe moved to that person. The presenter should maybe have touched his head. The presenter should have maybe somehow jumped. That. Then at the end of the day, you'll know that now these learners are actually now speakers. They're actually good speakers. Now together, when you combine listening, the listening steps and the speaking steps that we have seen, everything will now be summarized into communication. And to your name, you report this. Hoping that if we have trained learners, all of these steps at the end of senior 4, then when these learners are now presenting their reports, when these learners are presenting their continuous assessment, for you check, does this learner listen attentively with comprehension that was under listening? Does this learner talk confidently and explain ideas or opinions clearly? Does this learner use a range of media to communicate ideas? When did they develop this? For you, you taught them in class. You're sure you taught them. So when they are presenting their reports, you don't again have to remind them that, please, you go back, I'm rejecting that report because you do not use media to communicate. Or if you see they have not used media to communicate, a range of media, then you don't report on this. You say the learner did not use this one. However, you know that you taught. So it means that learner is still lagging behind. But nevertheless, subsequently, have to put in effort so that you also help this learner like that. So that is the skill of communication. So the skill of communication took a lot of our time because they wanted us to understand what a skill step means, how to teach a skill step, and how to assess it. So I'm seeing a lot of things in box. Let me first see if there are others that need immediate response. Then we proceed to our skills, to our generic skill number 2, in the syllabus book. Okay. Yes, the presentation will be shared after. Even the recording will also be available. Wycliffe Odengo is saying, does this Skills Builder Framework Guide exist in PDF? Yes, if I've shared the link, you just have to go to Google, you put in skillsbuilder.org. You'll be able to download a PDF version. However, the PDF version, for them, they still show skill steps. It may not show how to teach. That's why I thought that wise that let us go through a discussion how these skill steps can be taught. So it is there, it exists. Okay, so I think I've responded to the ones that are so urgent. Okay, so that is now communication. Then the second skill, generic skill in our syllabus book is problem solving and critical thinking. But however, the Skills Builder framework for it just calls it problem solving. So if you take learners through the steps of learning how to be problem solvers, then directly they'll also be developing the skill of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking and problem solving in our syllabus, they break them into these steps: plans and carries out investigations. So it means that now, at the end of the cycle in continuous assessment, you should be able to, a learner must be able to plan and carry out investigations, sort and analyze information, identify problems and way forward, predict outcomes and make reasoned decisions, and also evaluate different solutions. So, of course, as an educator, you have to ask yourself, what is this problem solving? What is problem solving? Because the learners have to be aware. And you have to teach this, you have to tell these learners these things directly, that maybe today the skill is problem solving. And this is what problem solving means. For instance, problem solving, ability to find a solution, a situation or challenge. Then what of critical thinking? Ability of putting forth an open-minded inquiry or investigation. So that is the problem solving. So what are critical thinkers? Critical thinkers are those ones that rigorously question ideas and assumptions rather than accepting them at face value. A critical thinker, you don't just look at things and you just accept them. You have to question them, question those assumptions instead of just accepting something. The critical thinkers will always seek to determine whether the ideas, arguments, and findings represent the entire picture, and are also open to finding out what they do not know. These are the things that we need in our learners. These are the things that we need in our learners. But some of them have not got an opportunity to know that these are things they need and how to develop these things. No wonder the new curriculum actually came in late. It was supposed to be there even by yesterday. Then critical thinkers will identify, analyze, and solve problems systematically rather than by intuition or instincts. When they are faced with challenges, when they are faced by problems, they go through steps to solve the problem. They don't just base on their instincts. People who base on their instincts or who base on their intuition solve problems end up even creating more problems. And we don't want to produce graduates who are like that. who think that problems can be solved by intuition or problems can be solved by instincts. We need graduates who can analyze and solve problems systematically. What is problem solving in use? How do we use it in our daily life? A supervisor who needs to resolve a conflict between two employees will use critical thinking to understand the nature of the conflict and also what action should be taken to resolve the situation. Finding out if some news is actually fake. Some of the people we normally interact with on social media, when you look at them, you see that the skill of critical thinking is not there. Whatever they get on social media, they just share. They don't go a step ahead to find out, wait a minute, this message I'm about to share, is it fake news or it is not fake news? So we don't want to produce graduates who behave like that. Everything they find, they just share. Critical thinkers, problem solvers, before they share any news, they have to first find out, is it fake news or accurate news? So how do you then teach that skill, skill of problem solving? You can't teach it as a whole. You break it down into steps. In a senior one, I explore complex problems by building my understanding through research. So in senior one, they know that for me to be a problem solver, I always have to make sure that I explore complex problems by building their understanding through research. So they learn that for everything they find, for every problem they find, for them to be able to understand it, they have to first go through research. They have to research. Then there you teach them, what does it mean to research? What are the types of research? Asking a neighbor a question, is this true? That is research. You give them tasks, you can give them activities, or you can give maybe them individual activities. Then you tell them, okay, you ask your neighbors, what do they know about this? You record. Ask them, what do they know about this? That is research. Then, if the neighbor doesn't know, what else do you do? Go to the library, look for the textbooks. How can I find a solution to this problem in this textbook? The one we normally call secondary research. The internet is there. Do they know that if they have complex problems, that internet can be of good help to them in making research? So you deliberately give them activities and you tell them that build your understanding on this topic through research. Go and research. Then come and report. How have you been able to use that research to solve this problem? Or have you been able to find a solution to that problem through your research? Then in senior two, they advance. I explore complex problems by analyzing the causes and effects. Analyzing the causes and effects. So you design activities that for these learners to be able to understand them, for these learners to be able to solve them, they have to first ask themselves, what is the cause here? And then, what are the effects? So it means that, for instance here, learners you have to first teach them, what does it mean by causes? What is the cause? Then what are effects? All that you teach them, what it means by causes, what it means by effects. So you as an educator, that is where your research is. In that a learner who asks the teacher, what do they mean when they say a cause? Then you tell them, when they say a cause, they mean this. Then what do they mean when they say an effect? Then this. Then now you design your activity from the learning outcome that you're going to cover in that particular lesson, and then you see if it is fitting into causes and the effects. For instance, if I'm teaching about soil erosion in biology, if I give them, like maybe we have been experiencing landslides in Bududa region, landslides. Then I tell them, there is a complex problem in Bududa. People are dying because of landslides. What do you think needs to be done to solve that problem? So you give the learners that activity. What do you think needs to be done to solve that problem of landslides in Bududa? Now, at Senior 2, learners are aware that now, since they are focusing on problem solving and they're focusing on skill step 8, they have to analyze the causes and effects. Now, learners will now go and ask themselves, what are the causes of those landslides there? What are the effects of those landslides there? Then if they now understand these causes and effects, then now they should be able to give solutions. But for you at that level, your main interest will now be causes. Are they able to identify the causes of landslides in Bududa? Tick. Are they able to identify the effects of landslides in Bududa? Tick. Then in senior 3, they advance. I create solutions for complex problems by generating a range of options. When they are solving problems, what do? Get a range of solutions. Then they now start seeing which one is appropriate, like that. So it means that now you have to teach these learners what does it mean by a range of options. All that you give them in the introduction. Then in senior 4, who is a problem solver at the level of senior 4, at step 10, I create solutions for complex problems by evaluating the positive and negative effects of a range of options. Now, in senior 3, they were just stopping at finding a range of options to create solutions. Now, at senior 4, they now advance, and they now go a step ahead of looking at the positive and the negative of each solution that they can identify on a given problem. That is now at senior 4. Then creativity. Creativity, this is now also another generic skill in our syllabus book. But however, the syllabus book reports it as creativity and innovation. And it breaks it down into these. And at the end of the cycle, these are the ones you have to report to UNEB. But for you to achieve them, you have first take these learners through the steps. You have to teach these learners how to be creative. Some of these things do not come as a talent. No one is gifted with the talent of creativity. People have to be taught what does it mean to be creative. Right from primary 1 up to university, but at varying levels. Creativity at senior 1 can't be the same creativity at senior 4. There must be some advancement. So what are those steps that they go through to advance? Sometimes the parents, your kid goes to the salon, instructs a barber how they want their hair to be designed. Then when they come home, you discourage them. What have you put in the head? Look at you, what the learners have the kid was creative. The kid was he imagined that, what if I make my hair like this? That is creativity. Maybe with the time they will improve from there. Then at the end of the day, they graduate into good professional barbers. That is creativity. So you don't have to discourage them. Whichever thing they see, if it is creative, then you encourage. You encourage. Then you can you now find another way of doing that? That way you'll be stimulating creativity and innovation. So how do you now teach it? At senior one, we expect them to be at this level. I use creativity in the context of my wider life. Now, as a teacher, you ask yourself, what does that mean? Because remember, when you introduce these skill steps to the learners, the first thing to do, you have to spend some time, at least 3 or 4 minutes, to interpret and explain to them the meaning of that skill step. So that when the learners start on your activity, they know what to expect. They know what to expect from them. So for instance, if you look at that skill step 7, what should come into your mind before you introduce this to the learners? You ask yourself, how is creativity used in the wider life? How is it used? And what are the benefits of using creativity in the wider life? Yeah, what is creativity? How can creativity be used in different areas of life? I've given you an example, a barber. How does a barber use creativity in his area? Hairstyles. How will the learners use creativity in biology? Maybe it is in the way how they present their scientific facts in their books. Maybe if you give them a task, how are they going to present their work? How is it going to differ from the rest? That is creativity. What is using imagination all about? All those things, you take them through. In this case, the teacher can even start by modeling lots of different areas of their wider lives where they use their creativity. For example, in hobbies, in making home improvements, in making travel plans. Learners can then think of all the different times that they use creativity in their wider lives. Maybe it can include activities that they do outside of school. How do they do them with creativity in mind? When they come up with plans, that is creativity. When they are maybe at the playfield and they want to, maybe they have a playfield, but there are so many, but they want to make sure that all of them fit in that small space. So how do they use their creativity to resolve that? They can say that, no, maybe now we're not going to use bigger goalposts. We're going to use just a shoe as a goalpost. We're going to play from a small area. So if you reach if you're able to shoot the ball at the shoe, then that is a goal. Now, that is creativity, using creativity in the context of my wider life. So you can take the learners through all those examples, how learners have been using creativity, even them without knowing that it is creativity. Then now, you now give them tasks or activities in your subject. Then you now task them to solve them using creativity. It is very possible. Then senior 2, I develop ideas by using mind mapping. Mind mapping is creativity, by the way, and a very important tool. So as a teacher, you have to ask yourself, what is mind mapping? What are mind maps? You go to Google, you put the mind maps. You go to YouTube, they'll give you what mind maps mean and how are they used. Then you teach these learners how these mind maps work. Then you design your activity, then you task them to produce a mind map. For instance, in my senior 2 learners, last year, what I did with them, when I found a particular learning outcome where I wanted these learners to be able to tell me how the food that they eat is used by the body. So I asked them to develop a mind map of how the body utilizes the different food nutrients that they eat. Then I went ahead, I said, now, you should start right from the time the food is digested. Then learners were able to give me mind maps. Now at the center, there is a food. Then from the food, they put arrows. One arrow is showing starch. Another arrow is showing proteins. Then on proteins, what happens? These proteins, they are broken down into amino acids. Then what are these amino acids used? On the amino acids, then they put bullets used to make body chemicals, used to make body parts. Then on starch, what do they put there? Glucose. What is this glucose used? Glucose, it provides energy to the body. So they develop like a web. So those of you who don't know mind maps, you Google what is a mind map. So they produce very beautiful charts of mind maps conveying the same concept. So that is now senior 2. That is creativity. Then you again now teach them, ask them, how do we use mind maps in our normal life? Maybe if you're going to find a job, if you're going to apply for a job, what are the things that you would consider? You can now develop a mind map that now I have to look at the distance. I have to look at how much are they giving me. You have to look at other things. Do they have allowances? Do they have this? Through mind mapping, that is now a skill step of creativity. At senior 2, then they advance. Senior 3, I develop ideas by asking myself questions. In most cases, we have also been able to use this creativity by asking ourselves questions. You ask yourself, for instance, if maybe, how does this idea fit in with the brief? If I have developed an idea, I ask myself, is this idea better or not better? If it is better, then how can I use it? Or if it is not better, what other option is there? So you keep on asking yourself questions as you develop more and more ideas. But still, as a teacher, you have now to sit down, make research. You say, what are the kind of questions that you can ask yourself? Are they closed questions or open questions? Remember, in listening, we also talked about using open questions. So you start relating. Senior 4, I develop ideas by considering different perspectives. Now there you can engage them maybe in a class discussion. You look at, maybe you pick a learner who has no idea about anything, then other groups, this group brings its idea. Another one brings an idea. Then you just now these learners also to develop his own idea using the different perspectives maybe he has had from others to come up with his own now unique idea. That is creativity, or that you have to discuss with the learners. Then another generic skill, cooperation and self-directed learning. It is a skill in the syllabus book. For them, they break it down into these 5 steps. Work effectively in diverse teams, interact effectively with others, take responsibility for your own learning, work independently with persistence, manage goals and time. Now, how do you teach learners all of these? In that when you're assessing them, they will not complain that, teacher, all along you've been spying on us. You've never told us anything like that. The skills builder framework helps. It breaks them down into these. It breaks down into teamwork, leadership, aiming high, and staying positive. So each of these has steps that are teachable, each of these. But at the end of the day, all of these add up to this. So we shall start with the teamwork. What are the steps under teamwork? What is teamwork to a senior 1? What is teamwork to a senior 2 learner? What is teamwork to a senior 3 learner? What is teamwork to a senior 4 learner? Senior 1, I contribute to group decision-making while recognizing the value of others' ideas. So now this one can be achieved through groups in classes. You can group the learners in a class, then after grouping them, then you give them an activity or you give them a task. Then you task each learner to demonstrate this, to contribute to group decisions, but at the same time recognizing the value of others. If they're involved in a debate, or maybe I can maybe give an example, maybe the family, the role of father and mother. So if someone says that a mother is the most relevant person in the home, then for you, when you're also contributing, for you say a father is the most relevant, then you don't again rubbish the other idea that no, for you are lying, this and this. So you teach them. Can you first recognize the value of the other, then also introducing yours? You teach them that contributing to group decision making, but at the same time, recognizing the values of other ideas, not to dominate that for you, whatever you say is correct. You teach them that through the content that you give them. You give them tasks, then for you, you sit at the back, you witness. Where they go overboard, you remind them, wait a minute. Are you recognizing the value of others' ideas? No. Then you teach them the value. You teach them the value of recognizing the ideas of others. Then at senior 2, I contribute to group decision making, encouraging others to contribute. When you're giving them tasks, you observe them in the groups. Are they encouraging their quiet colleagues to contribute? Are they encouraging? It shouldn't be the teacher. You go in a group, you say, please, so and so, contribute. For you, tell the learners, please encourage your colleagues to contribute. Then you see learners who are not encouraging their colleagues. Then you find out more. What could be the problem? Are they shy? Are they timid? Then how do you help them? That is teamwork. Then senior 3, I improve the team by not creating unhelpful conflicts. You teach them, how do you improve teamwork or team performance? At the same time, avoiding unhelpful conflict. This one can come out actually in some subjects which have topics related to conflicts or even experiments in sciences. Then at senior 4 now, they should now be able to resolve unhelpful conflicts. So you teach them how can you resolve unhelpful conflicts in a group. So as a teacher, you first make research. How is this one possible? Then when you make that research, then you teach the learners that if these are the things that you can do, maybe to resolve unhelpful conflicts in a group, you do like this. Then when you're giving them a task, when they're presenting, you demand them to display those skills that you have trained them to do. Leadership, it is also a skill under cooperation and self-directed learning. You train these learners to be leaders. This one now you can do it. Now, for leadership, it has to be developed individually. And how do you do it? Through groups, they keep on rotating roles. This time, student A is the leader. Then you see how they are able to recognize their own strengths and weaknesses as leaders. You can even, maybe the whole class, you can say now today, our discussion is this, the whole class is participating, but the chair of the discussion is student B. We need this student B to lead. Then at the end of the day, you task them, what are the strengths? What are your strengths? What strength have you discovered? And have you discovered any weaknesses in you? They brainstorm, they can even write on the blackboard that as I was reading, I discovered that I have this strength. I can convince people. I'm good at that. That is my strength. Then as a leader, convincing people is a problem. So that is my weakness. I'm not good at convincing people. My voice is very low when I'm speaking as a leader. So that is a weakness. I'm very audible. That is my strength. So you take them through the steps, you give each learner a chance. Remember, you have a whole year. For you, a learner who achieves that, you note down that now student B is a good leader now. Student C has not yet, because his time has not yet come to present. You make sure that at the end of the year, every learner has gotten an opportunity to be in a leadership position, and you have trained them how to recognize their own strengths and also how to recognize their own weaknesses through giving them roles, leadership roles in class discussions. At senior 2, they now go a step ahead. I recognize the strength and weakness of others in my team. Now, in senior 1, it was about recognizing their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, in senior 2, is the learner able to recognize the strengths and weaknesses of others in the team? So you teach them all that, or you give them chance and you teach them how to do it, or you give them a chance of how to do it. Then number 10, skill step 10 in senior 4, I support others through mentorship. Still, in groups, you give someone a leadership role, then you task them, how can you support others through mentorship? Or maybe if you have identified someone has a weakness, then you assign as a learner to help the other one. Maybe it can even be a whole week. Then also this one who has a given strength, and it is the weakness of the other one. Then you are now saying the other one, because now they know their strength, they know their weaknesses. In senior 1, 2, and 3, they have been focusing on that strength and weaknesses of individual members or of other members in a team. Now, in senior 4, since they now know the strengths of others and the weaknesses, and also for themselves, now you are now assigning them their colleagues to start helping them. Your colleague is not good at convincing. For you're good at convincing, can you mentor him how to also be a good convincer? That is supporting others through mentorship. Then at the end of senior 4, you will know that now you actually have a good leader at the level of a senior 4. That this is a good leader because he can support others through mentorship. Then aiming high. Aiming high is another step under cooperation and self-directed learning. How does this come into the picture? Ability to set clear, tangible goals and devise a robust route to achieving them. In senior 1, I set goals, ordering and prioritizing tasks to achieve them. So in senior, so you task them to do that. For example, in experiments in sciences, ask them, what do we need? We need to do this. How are you going to achieve it? You task them, first of all, I'm going to do this, maybe yogurt making project. They want to make yogurt in 2 days. They have set a goal. Now, in these 2 days, it means all other projects in other subjects will have to pause. And this is what I'm going to do. On the first day, I will do this. In the evening, I do this. Second day, in the morning, I do this. In this, I do this. Then they achieve. You see if they can be able to set goals, put them in order, and prioritize these tasks to achieve the goals that they set. So still you can do that through activities that you give them in class. I set goals and secure the right resources to achieve them. All these, you train them. Then staying positive also is under cooperation and self-directed learning. Ability to use tactics and strategies to overcome setbacks and achieve goals. In senior one, what are you training them? I look for opportunities in difficulty situations. You create, in your learning outcomes, you create, you create difficult tasks or situations in your class, depending on the content that you have. Then you can now task these learners to identify opportunities in there. Then, so all of these, staying positive, aiming high, leadership, and teamwork, all of them are under cooperation and self-directed learning. And at the end of the senior 4, when you're reporting, when you're submitting their project work to your name, in their presentations, if you have taken them through the steps of learning, all those steps that we have gone through, you should be able to see a learner who can work effectively in diverse teams. You should be able to see a learner who interacts effectively with others. You should be able to see a learner who takes responsibility for their own learning. You should be able to see a learner who works independently with persistence, and also a learner who manages goals and time. So them achieving this would be very easy if you have patiently taken them through these steps that we have discussed, those ones there. Then, lastly, the last skill, mathematical computation and ICT proficiency. Now, this one, it is not part of the skills builder framework. It is not there. This one is not there. But of course, in our syllabus book, it is there. Now, some teachers think that these skills are only in mathematics and ICT. No, mathematics and ICT is in our daily work. Every day we experience mathematics, we use mathematics. Every day we use ICT. Even you being able to log in into this session today, you've used ICT. Either you acquired the skills from school or you had to learn. You had to learn. You are forced by circumstances to learn how to use Zoom. So also, these learners at senior, maybe they don't know even what Zoom is. But of course, for them now, most of them were lucky that in COVID, they got to know what Zoom is. But suppose they not go through Zoom, they will not be aware what Zoom is. But they needed, they would have gotten these skills from school. How? You teaching them or embedding the use of mathematics computation and the use of ICT tools in the learning. In our daily lives, when do we use mathematics? You find statements like on news that 6 in 10 of urban dwellers use wood fuel for cooking. What does that one mean? Drugs being prescribed as 2 times 3 and 3 times 2. What does it mean? Are you not going to think that they are the same? That 2 times 3 and 3 times 2 is the same if you do it. Very deadly. Loans offered at 1% rate. What does that mean? Does a graduate have to go and look for a neighbor to tell him what it means by saying that they are going to give him a loan at 24% interest? Even you ask yourself, wait a minute, did you go to school? Yes. Which level? University? University. And you can't know how much they're going to deduct from you if they say that the loan is offered at 24% rate. Those are the things. And some graduates do that because they miss the chance of knowing the relevance of these things when they were still at school. In sciences, geography, biology, chemistry, physics, we always present things in graphs. You find a graph, a line graph, a bar graph. That is using mathematical computation. Or that now what has to change, that now these things have to be done using a computer. Why a computer? Because in the end of cycle assessment, they will not ask a learner to plot a graph. Which skill is there? Plot a graph, how are they going to assess it? But however, you expect them, maybe if they have done a project, and in this project, they got data, and they want to present this data to the class. How are they going to do it? Do they know that, no, I have to now, since it is this, I have to plot a bar graph. Since the data looks like this, I have to plot a line graph. Since the data looks like this, I have to plot a pie chart. Do they know that now, when do I have to use a bar graph? When do I have to use a chart to present information? And in reports, because they'll have to give you a typed report, not handwritten, a typed report. What have they used to type that report? ICT. Are you going to accept a report where they have plotted a graph with hands? The other words are well neatly typed and printed. Then when it comes to a graph, they have written it with hands. Or they have drawn a drawing with a pen or a pencil in a typed work. Are you going to accept that? Or are you going to demand that they should present work which is printed and typed? Even if it is a diagram, it has to be done with a computer. If it is a graph, it has to be done with a computer. But how have they known how to use the computer to plot which type of graph? Are you going to leave that to the ICT? No, you have to do it. If you give them basic data, task them, they say, now I want you to go and plot this graph using whichever tools that they can use. And they come and present their graphs to the rest of the class. So all this you have to teach them. So for us, how are we presenting them? So how are you reporting them their name? You're going to report whether a learner can use numbers and measurements accurately. How are you going to see this? You give them experiments. In the report, if they said, we had to measure 50 cubic centimeters, we added there 20 cubic centimeters of soil. That is using numbers and measurements accurately. But most importantly, these ones are easy to see that learners can do. The first one, the second one, the third, and the second. But now using technology. And that is where the point is. They have to use technology in whatever work they are doing. They have to use technology. Okay. So how do we introduce these skills of mathematical computation and proficiency to the learners? Sorry, here my heading says in the skills builder, but they are not there. It is an error here, they are not there. So you'll pick them from this presentation here. They are not there. So step 7, that is now in senior 1. In senior 1, I create insights by using data and technology accurately and critically. So that is what you teach them. That is what you teach them to do. You teach them how can they use data and technology. Actually, we shall go through the steps of how you can do it. Then in senior 2, now here they're only using technology to process quantitative data for weather communication and interrogation. Then senior 3, you now introduce them to collaborative software tools in senior 3 and senior 4, all those. So how do you achieve these steps, or how do you teach these to the learners? You can do it in steps. We shall start with skill step 7. That is now in senior 1. So what does it say? I create insights by using data and technology actually and critically. So this itself suggests that the individual is skilled at analyzing data and also using technology to extract meaningful and valuable insights. And how can you teach this concept? The first thing you have to teach these learners to understand data sources, and the quality of the data that they have. That is what you have to do. Teach learners how to critically evaluate the sources of data and assess its quality. Discuss with them the importance of using reliable and relevant data to generate accurate insights. If they have maybe found, maybe they have been doing experiments, maybe on the effect of temperature on enzyme activity, and they're now seeing the figures that at 10 degrees Celsius, the rate of activity was 3. At 20 degrees Celsius, the rate of activity was 5. Can learners know the source of this data? And can they assess its authenticity? Then also you can now teach the learners or guide them in the process of collecting data using technology. How can we use technology to collect data? We've seen there's a video I saw in Kenya primary schools, where learners were given cameras. They had to go and take pictures of non-living things and living things. So they are using technology to collect data. So you can give them also that task in senior 1. Of course, in our schools, they don't allow tabs. Sometimes I've seen teachers do that for them. Teachers go, take pictures, they collect the data for them. So it is the learner that is supposed to go through that to know which tools can they use to collect which data. Using a thermometer itself, you give them experiments. You see if they're able to use a thermometer to collect data. How do they do that? Using sensors, etc. How can they use these tools to collect data? So at that level, at senior 1 level, you introduce them to the tools that they can use to collect data in your subject area. So you have to think about your subject, which tools they need. In music, in maybe history, they can even use microphones, interviews. The microphone is a tool that they're going out to use to collect data and record that information. All that you're teaching them in senior 1. Then you also introduce them to various data analysis techniques, such as statistical analysis and data visualization. So after they have collected that data, how are they going to analyze that data? If it is pictures, what do they need to analyze those pictures? Will they stay on the camera, or they have eventually to upload those pictures on the computer, look at them, and analyze them, sort them? That now these are non-living things. For instance, if it is biology, maybe I'm assuming I had given them an assignment to go and take pictures of living things and non-living things. Now they now have to sit on a computer, analysis techniques, and now group them that no, these are living things, these are non-living things. So that is how you achieve step 7 in senior 1 under mathematics proficiency, mathematics, computation, and ICT proficiency. And you're embedding all of this in your class content. Then in senior 2, what level do they now go to? I create insights by using technology to process quantitative data for wider communication and interrogation. What does this skill step mean? What do you expect from the learners? Or how do you teach it to the learners, for instance? Here you teach a learner how to create insights using technology to process quantitative data for wider communication and interrogation. Now, what is wider communication? You have to tell them what is wider communication. Presenting your information to a bigger group. Now, it's now beyond you. How now are you going to present this? Introduce these learners to, at this level in senior 2, that's when even introduce them to data analysis tools, such as Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets. I don't know if also some of us teachers have introduced ourselves to these kind of software. You have to now make research and you introduce your learners to them. What is Microsoft Excel? What does it do? It may not be your role to teach them how to use a computer, but for you can now constantly give them assignments that will force them to go and use a computer to analyze that data. You have given them, they have done an experiment, maybe it was about collecting data on how many people are malnourished in a given community. Then now tell them to use Microsoft Excel to analyze that data. So introduce to them, what does Microsoft, what does Excel do? What are Google Sheets? What do they do? Explain to them how these tools can be used to process quantitative data and then extract out meaningful information. It is not just a matter of punching figures in the computer and you say, but you have now to process this data and make meaningful insights. So you introduce them to those systems in a senior 2. Provide hands-on practice with data processing. You give them the assignments. Teach them how to use technology to create visual representatives of quantitative data in biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, geography, etc. Teach them, now that's when you introduce them to charts. You show them what is the chart, what does the chart look like, and which kind of information can be used. So which type of information can be put on a chart? When do you use a graph? When do you use a dashboard? In that they know that if I have this type of data, I have now to present it on a graph. Visual representations, creating now visual representations. If I've been collecting data on the patterns of rain throughout the year. Now, which visual tool can I use to represent this rain pattern throughout the year for someone to understand it. We still have to use the figures that in December, 12 millimeters, in January, 5 millimeters, in February, 4 millimeters, like that. If someone looks at those figures, will they be able to understand them? Now then you teach them that now, here, maybe a graph can be better. Then you task them to use a computer to plot these graphs. Don't teach these learners how to plot graphs using a pen. They will not apply that principle anywhere in the assessment or anywhere in their daily lives. They'll only apply it when using a computer. Teach them how to use a computer to do most of these things. Even drawing pictures, teach them how they can use a computer to draw them. And where will you be assessing this skill from? Project work. If you've given them a project, they have collected the data, there are things they have to draw. You tell them to give you a project work where everything is printed, not handwritten. That is what they do in daily lives. At university, some of you did research at university. I don't think that you handed in your research report with the pen or pencil drawings, if they are there. You had to use a computer. Now you introduce these learners to these things in senior 2. Then in senior 3, they now advance. In senior 3, I create insights by using technology to support collaborative discussions. Now here, this one would involve guiding them in using digital tools to facilitate information exchange, critical thinking, and the generation of valuable ideas within a group setting. So this is where now you have to introduce them to collaborative ICT tools, such as video conferencing platforms, online whiteboards, shared document editing tools. All these things, they have to go with these skills in. They have to finish senior 4 when they have these skills. In their project work, can they be able to show some aspect of collaborative technology? If they can do it well and good, do they know these tools? Zoom, you now introduce them to Zoom as a teacher, as an innovative teacher, a teacher making a difference. You can even task them, you can maybe say now you're going to present, but I want some people to present from maybe the computer lab, others present here. Then you see, are these learners able to use these tools to facilitate their own learning? In other words, here, it is about learners demonstrating how to use technology for collaborative discussions in senior 3. Then senior 4, they now advance. I create insights by using technology to support collaborative decision-making. This one involves a combination of practical skills, critical thinking, and understanding of how technology can enhance group processes. Now here it involves working in groups, but using technology. You now see here in senior 3, the individual should show competence that he can use these tools on his own, or he can use these tools to facilitate sharing information. Then now in senior 4, now using tools as a group, using these ICT tools as a group. You've heard of Google Workspace. You can give them an activity. You say, I want you to open up Google shared documents. Everyone goes, you research, you write in your information that you have researched. In that same document, another person logs in using his email, research, also puts there his information. Like that, like that. Okay? Then explain the features and benefits of each of these tools. You've heard of Microsoft Teams. You've heard of Team Viewer. Are they able to use all of those Team Viewer, group collaboration? Someone is there, is entering into your computer, is seeing whatever you can even manipulate, you can even use your computer remotely. You introduce them to all that technology, but focusing on your subject content, depending on the learning outcomes that you have picked from the syllabus book. Give them real-world examples of how technology has been used to support collaboration decision-making in various contexts. For instance, you may discuss how businesses use collaborative tools to make strategic decisions, how research teams use technology to reach consensus on findings. Provide them with opportunities to engage in hands-on practice with collaborative tools involving creating a shared document on Google. I don't know how many of us here know how to create a Google shared document. Of course, as teachers, we have to be at an advanced level. We have to be there. Now, how are you going to teach learners this skill if you yourself, you don't know how to use it? Or even learners can challenge you. So you don't have to allow that. So now those are the steps that you can go through to teach the skill of mathematical computation and ICT proficiency. Then at the end of the day, when these learners are actually presenting their reports for you, you just tick. See, were they able to use numbers and measurements accurately? If it is yes, you tick. Were they able to interpret and interrogate mathematical data? Yes, you tick. Okay? Did they use technology to create, manipulate, and process information? If you see that they had graphs plotted with a computer, then it means they were able to use technology to create and manipulate or process information. More so, you taught them. Okay? You were giving them assignments, you are assessing them, you taught them how to use technology to create and manipulate information. Uses technology to collaborate, communicate, and refine their work. You see the skill step of senior 3 and 4, using technology to collaborate, communicate, and refine their work. Have they been able to use some collaborative tools, ICT tools, in coming up with their work? All of that you report to your name, that these learners were actually able to do all of this. So those are the generic skills and how they can be taught. Now, the last phase, which I'm going to use in less than 10 minutes or less than 20 minutes, then we conclude. I will get some questions from you. Now, all that is said. Now, how do you plan? How do you plan to teach these skills? Of course, a teacher's planning is in the lesson plan. And before you go to any class, you have to first sit down and write a lesson plan. Now, that is where your planning comes in from. So, how do you make a lesson plan that is having the generic skills and the skill steps? How do you do that? Of course, a typical lesson plan looks like this. You have the class, you get this class from the syllabus, you have the subject, you know the subject that you're going to teach, the theme, you get the theme from the syllabus book, the topic, also get the topic from the syllabus book, the skill step and description. Now this one, get them either from this presentation, which I'm going to share, or if you're able to download the Skills Builder framework, you pick them from the Skills Builder framework. But also, the Skills Builder framework does not show you which class a skill is taught. Does not show you that. And you'll be able to extract that one from my presentation. Or you can still follow from the skill step 0 is for P1. Now you move from that, P1, P2, P3, up to senior, up to P7. Then skill step 7 is senior 1, 8, senior 2, 9, senior 3, 10, senior 4. So you only need those 4. So you pick which skill step are you going to, the skill and the skill step you're going to teach. Then, of course, you get the learning outcome, which is also extracted from the syllabus book. Then now you design your learning activity. Now, the learning activity should be designed by contextualizing the content through considering the values and the cross-cutting issues. Then you construct the learning experience that will enhance the skill step as they construct the concept. I'll give you an example of this lesson plan. Then there is also a category for performance indicators. What are you going to base on to assess these learners or to see that these learners have actually achieved the skills that you intended them to achieve? So look at this. This one is an example of a biology lesson plan. Biology lesson plan. So biology, the class is senior 2. The subject is biology. The theme is nutrition in plants and animals. The topic is nutrition types and nutrient compounds. All this information is got from the lesson plan book. Sorry, from the syllabus book. Then, where now in our NCDC lesson plan, for them, they just put this generic skills. So for you here, you can modify this one to skill step, and description. You can modify it like this. So this is my skill step and description. So remember we said that you focus on the skill step rather than the skill itself. So I decided that in this lesson, I'm going to be teaching the skill of listening. And since the class is senior 2 is step 8. I show I'm listening by summarizing or rephrasing what I have heard. So now what are the learning outcomes? Also from the syllabus book. The learning outcome is appreciate the causes and effects of nutrient deficiency in humans, including diseases related to malnutrition. So this is the learning outcome from the syllabus book. This is how it is stated. I've not changed any word. Now, when I look at this, I see I want it to fit in this skill step. So see how I designed my activity, the learning activity, the activity that I'm going to give to the learners in class. Learners representatives will visit a nearby nutrition clinic and listen to a nutritionist talking about nutrient deficiencies and diseases related to malnutrition. Now, this is my activity to achieve this learning outcome. Task: summarize the causes and effects of nutrient deficiencies in humans and report back to the rest of the class. Now you see, I think you have already seen that this one is fitting well in my skill step. Then now what are the performance? Now the performance indicators means that how am I going to really see that these learners have achieved that? So see my performance indicator. To demonstrate the skill step, the learner should show that they can listen, and then summarize or rephrase what they have heard. In this task, learners would listen and make notes or a presentation on the causes, effects, and diseases related to malnutrition, and relay to the rest of the class by repeating the key points in their own words. Now, that is my lesson plan. And I think this lesson, it is very achievable, very achievable. And then learners have to know my expectations or what I expect from them. Depending, so that what I expect from them as far as the skill step 8 is concerned. So when the learners have done this, from the performance indicator, then I will tick. I know that now in this lesson, I've been able to achieve my learning outcome and also the generic skill. I have achieved that skill of communication or listening. So that is how you incorporate these generic skills into the lesson plan. Look at English. I hope we have our English friends here. Still on the same listening skill step 8. It is senior 2. Subject, English language. Theme, public or education. Topic, finding information. So what is the learning outcome from the syllabus book? Extract and present information from recorded material. Now this one, it perfectly fits well into the listening skill, into that skill step, perfectly well. Then now you design your activity. For instance, here, your class is preparing for a study trip to the shores of Lake Victoria. The class has been divided into study teams, and as one of the team leaders, you are required to listen to the guidelines for presenting the report, which are recorded and played to the class by the geography teacher. Summarize the content of what you have heard before you set off for the trip and present it to your group. Remember, the learning activities are the ones you give to the learners. These ones you give to the learners. You can either maybe dictate or write on the chalkboard. Never go to class without an activity. Never do it. Remember, our learning, our teachings should be scenario-based. And it is in these activities where you get a scenario, a stimulus. So it is in that scenario where you have to carefully put in your skill step that you are looking at. So what will be the performance indicators? Now, the performance indicator focuses itself on the attainment or on the achievement of the skill step together with the learning outcome. Your performance indicator focuses on these two, the skill step and the learning outcome. So in other words, in your performance indicator, you should clearly state how will you know that these learners have achieved that skill step or have demonstrated mastery of that skill step. So that this performance indicator is yours. And originally in our syllabus book, so in our lesson plan from the NCDC, performance indicators are not there. But there is a space there. Most of the lesson plans for different schools I have seen, there is this space here. So you can make that one the performance indicator, and you write your performance indicator there. Then, how do you report them? Now, reporting, parents have to know the skills that their learners have achieved. The parents have to know them. They have to know these skills. What skills have their learners achieved in school? And it also helps you to keep track. For instance, which skills did you focus on in the term 1? Because remember, we have many skills: communication, problem solving, creativity. So it means that now all those steps, you teach them the whole year. But for each generic skill or for each skill, you teach a single step per year. So also, you have to keep track of which skills have you not yet looked at. If you've finished listening, have you done speaking yet? If you have also done the speaking, have you done problem solving yet? If you've done the problem solving, have you done the mathematical computation yet? Or if you've not found any learning outcome that can fit into all the steps, then that one you can leave. Because sometimes in the, say maybe in literature, it may be hard to achieve some of the mathematical skills. It may be, but it is possible also to achieve them. It is possible. If you're very creative, it is possible to achieve them. So here, reporting them, we are saying you can observe a group performance and report on an individual achievement. If you've been looking at a whole group, if you've sent a whole group to the hospital to summarize and rephrase what they have had the medical doctor say. Now, if this group presents and you see their work, so it means that now all members of that group have achieved that skill. So you report individually, but knowing that you're assessed as a group. But however, there are some skills that are hard to assess as a group, like leadership. For leadership, each learner has to get a chance. Each learner has to stand in the shoes of a leader and demonstrate those skills. So not everything can be done as a group. Then now, how do you comment? The reports have two sections. There is a facilitator comment and a generic skill comment. So for the facilitator, there you're rating your own observations of the learner, depending on the activities that they have been doing in class. You're reporting you as a facilitator. Still, it is not about the scores. A learner can get 2 out of 3, but when this learner was actually sick, when you know this learner is actually a good learner in class, when you actually know this learner in class that has been a good learner. So you can say maybe so and so, in spite of getting poor grades, he's a committed learner. Now, there, the facilitator is a standard. Then, now for the skill, generic skill, if it is about maybe this, listening. So you can, so if that term, you assess this learner in the skill of listening, then now you can write that this learner can summarize or rephrase what they have heard. Now, you report that one as a generic skill. The learner can summarize what he has heard. Now, that is at the level of senior 2. Then at senior 4, senior 3, you again now report what have they achieved. It makes it understandable to the parent and also to track the progress of the learner by the parent. Otherwise, if you say term 1 on the report, you're saying this learner, if you're to report them the way they appear in the syllabus book, in term 1, you say, let me get that example. I don't know if it is nearby. Yeah. In term 1, you say the learner uses numbers and measurements accurately. In term 2, the same statement appears. In senior 2, the same statement appears. Senior 3, the same statement appears. Senior 4, the same statement appears. does it mean that every time you're still on that one? But if you now report these steps, then the parent will know that, oh, in term one or in senior one, this learner was able to use data and technology actually and critically. Now in senior two, he's able now to do this. In senior three, he's now able to do this. In senior four, he's able to do this. So even here, the parent will be able now to accurately track the progress of their learner in the attainment of the generic skills. So lastly, is there failing? Yes, a learner can fail. A learner can fail. And if they fail, it should be about you, the facilitator, to still help that learner individually. You help that learner individually, you single that learner out, you help him until he progresses, until he achieved that step before progressing to the next step. A learner shouldn't skip the steps of senior one and go to steps of senior two directly. If they're in senior two and they have not yet achieved the step of senior one, you have first make sure that they have achieved the senior one step before they progress to the senior two step. A learner can only move forward when they have demonstrated mastery of the previous steps. John Dewey said that if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, then indeed we are robbing them of tomorrow. So kindly let us not teach these learners the way we are taught. Our times have changed. Let us teach them the way they have to be taught today, that we don't teach them, so that we don't rob them of their tomorrow. Thank you for your attention. So that comes to the end of my presentation. It was quite a lengthy one, very lengthy. And I want to thank those ones who have been able to stay with us up to the end. I hope you have achieved something. But nevertheless, we shall continue seeing that we can keep on updating ourselves on the new things that come up. I know we are still hungry about what is there in continuous assessment, what is there in project work. Maybe, God willingly, through these very sessions, we shall be able to help ourselves learn these things. We do not have to wait for the government to organize regional workshops when we have these ICT tools that we can exploit and use to help ourselves. Thank you so much for listening to me. So I think I can now take some questions. And also, if Mr. Kaziba is still with us, can also let me summarize some of the questions from which are flowing inbox. Okay, so any questions? Before I open the chat, maybe if you have any questions that you want to ask verbally, you can raise up your hand, then we unmute you. We give you the opportunity to share with us.
The chat, I'm just looking through the chat, but it seems, okay, there is one there. Yes, Mr. Ogwang-san. Ogwang-san, you can unmute.
Okay, thank you, presenter, for your presentation. It was a wonderful presentation. Mine is just I joined a bit late, so I found some other part already covered. How can you people help us, those who join late? Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. The presentation will be shared. Also, the recording will be shared. Maybe, Mr. Kaziba, you can tell them the YouTube channel where they will find this recording.
Okay. Okay. Let me show them maybe where they are going to find. Now, the YouTube channel is called Holistic E-Learning Platform. So this is where you're going to find all the recordings for any sessions that we have been having. So you're going to come here and then check out for any session that you want. For any sessions that we have carried out in a holiday, you just check around here and then you'll find out all the different videos. So like even you had teacher Arthur was talking about the problem solving. We have had sessions with Professor Padu about the same, and there is the recordings. I know some of you might have missed that session on how we can use problem solving as a means of teaching. So you'll just come here and then scroll through, and then you'll be able to meet that session. So there is a session here about the same. So there are very many videos here that you can utilize even in your lessons. So even any lessons, we have posted a lot of things. So just look out for Holistic E-Learning Platform, and then you can be able to access all the videos. So anything, even this video after this session, you'll find it on this platform.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kaziba. I hope members have noted. Teacher Sendaula Sharif.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Good evening to you.
I thank you for the opportunity. Now, my issue, actually, I really appreciate the work, and we are really feeling like this is what we need, because day in, day out, people are complaining of what universities are giving out there in the field. But as teachers, how are we really going to get that middle ground because schools are still demanding for marks, parents are asking for marks, given the fact that our education system is almost 95% or even more a private sector owned thing. So you see, teachers are now finding a challenge, how to strike a balance between the achievement of the marks, which we even don't know how it will be, and then trying to give learners these basic things that actually matter even more than the marks. Is it that we be hopeful with time we are really going to phase out the issue of marks, or we just have to struggle and find a way of fitting these things within the marks issue? Otherwise, we all know what's happening in our schools, that even if you try these things, they will still say, where are the marks? And it's really challenging. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharif. Now, yes, indeed, we have challenges that some schools are still marks-minded, but I'm sure the reason why that is still the case is because of there is delay by the relevant authorities, specifically the QNEB, to actually publish how assessment will be done. I'm sure when UNEP publishes that information, schools will wake up to the realization that actually it is not about the content, it's about the skills, and also it's about the exposure of these learners to real life situations that can help enable them answer or respond to the items that will be in the end of cycle assessment. So it is a matter of time. It is a matter of time they will accept, they will know that it is not about the marks, it is about these things. Because even in the continuous assessment project work, these skills have to be reported. So, and it means that now the learners have to be knowing these skills, and that these skills are actually assessed at the end of the cycle through continuous assessment. It's called continuous assessment. So schools, when they get this information, they will wake up. They will wake up, and they know they will. Now, given that you have been lucky, you have at least gotten some idea. So you can be an ambassador. You can be an ambassador. At least time will come, they will exonerate, time will exonerate you that actually you were right. I don't know if there is also another member who would like to comment on that. Yes, Ochaya Dominic.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. for giving us this lesson. Actually, I have learned a lot and I thank God for allowing me to join this presentation.
Thank you.
However, I want to inquire just one thing that I'm a teacher of biology and chemistry. Now, should I go with the intention of only achieving like one generic skill per lesson, or I can cover like 2, 3? Thank you.
Okay, the learning outcome will dictate. The learning outcome that you intend to teach will dictate which skill you have, which skill step you have to pick from the syllabus. So for you, when you look at the learning outcome, then now you ask yourself, which skill am I going to use to help me achieve this learning outcome? So you just follow the learning outcome. The learning outcomes will keep on directing you. For instance, if you find like now the one we've seen of biology, deficiency diseases, if you think that maybe these learners have to go, actually even in some learners' books, that activity is there, that they listen to a doctor talking about the nutrition deficiencies. So now when you see that, then you know that, oh, this one actually fits perfectly well in the listening skill. Then now you know that now in my lesson, I'm now going to focus on the listening skill, step number 8. So for you, just follow the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes will now push you to the next skills that you can use. Yes, Alfred?
Yeah, good evening, Teacher Arthur.
Good evening to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Yes, I'd like to ask, because if let's say I am now evaluating and seeing if my learners have achieved, let's say, a generic skill, could be, let's say, to be specific, maybe let's say in listening. If I wish I could remember one I would pick particularly. So I was asking if I can be able to use codes, let's say 1, 2, 3, because like I'm sure someone might have maybe have learned something, but not yet to that level where maybe I can say it's successfully learned. So I don't know in that if we would use codes, the 1, 2, 3, or we can just say has achieved or what. Because I'm trying to think that sometimes a learner has achieved something, yes, but maybe to not where, maybe to the not to that level. Some others they are perfect, and others are moderate, and others are basic. So I don't know if we can use codes to like grade them in that way.
Well, thank you. Now, you may not have to use like scores, 1, 2, 3, it is said when you're assessing them. Now, for you, when you focus, for example, when you focus on showing that they are listening by using open questions to deepen their understanding. So for you, when you go through one session and you introduce them to what open questions are and how they can use them to deepen their understanding, then for you, you design your activity in that for the learners to adequately present on that activity, they are going to use all those tools in the skill step. Then, of course, they may not perfect it in the very first time. They may not perfect it, but you have a whole year. You can keep on reinforcing it. When you find another learning outcome that fits in this one, you are going to bring it. So if gradually they'll keep on achieving it through reinforcement. By the end of the year, they'll have achieved it. So you don't have to keep on scoring that now for you at level 3, for you at level 2. You may be surprised. Someone who may be at level 3 today, if you don't reinforce it, in the third term will have forgotten, will have gone back to level 1. That for you think that he was actually at level 3. So you focus on reinforcement, hoping that now with time, these things, they express them naturally through their daily life experiences. Okay, so we have the lady. Yes, Beatrice.
Where? Hello.
Yes, Beatrice.
Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm glad that you have gone through all the schemes of work, the lesson plan, and above all, reminding us of what we are supposed to do. My question is, this lesson plan and schemes of work, basically, it has been of secondary school teachers. Does it also apply to primary section? Then I'm requesting the first presenter. He was a biology facilitator. All the examples he gave was on biology. I'm requesting that we get some sample questions also in arts department. I submit. Thank you so much.
Before you go, Beatrice.
Yes.
First presenter, which first presenter? Is it in this session or previous sessions, not today?
In this session, sir.
Because I've been the only one presenting.
Okay. So you, from the first session, from the beginning up to the end? Yes.
I was more leaning towards biology.
Yeah, good. But we are also missing that arts department, like CRE history. I was very eager to hear something from history and the CRE department. Unfortunately, that my presenter today has been a biology teacher. So I'm requesting you send us some sample questions on how we hope UNEB is to set.
Okay, now.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, with the things of UNEB, the sample questions, that one, I'm not in. I don't have the authority, and I don't have the resources to share those things because I personally don't have them. And UNEB has not yet published them. They have a reason, I think. They have a reason why they have not yet. Perhaps maybe they are still refining them. They are still refining them. But I'm sure when UNEB finishes its work, those things will be public information to schools. So for sample questions per subject, those ones you just be patient. I'm sure UNEB will dispatch those things to schools. They will be public information. But for now, they have not yet released those things. We don't have them and we don't know. We can only guess, but we don't know accurately. So they will share them when they are ready.
Okay. You have challenged me. But we have been hearing that there will be 3 sections being asked in different subjects, like from different, like I heard from Waukesha guys, they were saying that they're going, like in CRE, they're going to give us 3 types of questions. Questions in section A will contain structured questions. Then questions in section B containing critical thinking questions. Then the third one being essay work. Yes, please. That's why I hurried to find out whether you have also had something like that.
Anyway, me, I have not yet had anything, but at least the information that I know is that these sample questions will be released to schools before the first attempts. At least that one I have from reliable sources, that they will release those sample questions and they are marking it to schools before the term opens, at least from reliable sources.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, Farida.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have like two questions. One is how do we continue changing the mindsets of the teachers who are not yet into the competence-based way of teaching? It is still a very big problem, especially those in the rural areas. And then two, how do we support the material setup? They still claim that here in the rural areas, materials are not enough, we cannot access internet, we cannot access gadgets. So I think we need to, maybe if you can support me on that. Personally, I support schools. I work with Cotton On Foundation. And then another thing which I would like to maybe mention is that if possible, we could get a session on competence-based assessment. I think we may not really need to wait for UNEB, but if someone can look at the curriculum and find out and then read more on competence-based assessment, then any teacher can therefore come up with a question or with an item. And then lastly, there is still a very big challenge on the primary curriculum, linking it to the O-level curriculum, because you realize that as the secondary is now trying to move away from exam-oriented, primary is still too much onto it. I don't know how we can address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the concern. In your first and the second day submission, how do we make sure that the teachers or schools comply and we are all on the same level? Yes, there are still challenges. There are still challenges. And we are just hoping on goodwill ambassadors. Like for instance, now me, I want to see at least there is some change, at least there is some mindset change in my colleagues, at least that my colleagues are doing the right thing, or are getting updated information as it appears. Those are some of the things that motivate us to share some of this information that we come up with on such platforms like the holistic e-learning platforms. So I don't really have the exact response to you that what can we do to make sure that all our colleagues are at par. Maybe we can only rely on goodwill ambassadors for now. But also, maybe there are other colleagues in attendance here that also have something that they feel they can share about what can we really do to make sure that we support ourselves, make sure that everyone complies, make sure that we change the mindset from the old curriculum to the new curriculum. That one still remains a challenge, and there's still a gap what actually we can do. But maybe if there is someone there who can also share what can we do, what do we need to do. Then on assessment, on continuous, on competence-based assessment, a session. Now, that information is there. Some subjects or some people actually, because UNEB is working with a team of teachers, people have an idea about how the exams will be, how the assessment will be. But however, the information is not yet official. And perhaps maybe because it has not yet been official, things are mutating every day. So I think that they don't want to rush, publish something, then teachers take it as a gospel truth. Then after 1 week, it again changes. Then we now get confused. I'm tending to think that maybe relevant authorities are delaying for such reasons. They want me that they publish something which is final and which may not be changing. And this is the final year. This year, whether they want or they don't want, they have to give us those things. And we are waiting for them. They have to. But again, now when we access them, and we'll be able to access people who have more knowledge on how those documents or how those items are set. I'm sure through these very platforms, we shall be able to help ourselves as teachers through these engagements. The primary curriculum, also I hear in the rumors that they are also planning of changing it. So let us be hopeful that they are actually going to change it, because they are not fitting anywhere in the secondary curriculum. So they have to change it. But the rumors are there that they are working on changing it. Yes, Julius, Nkondo James. Yes, Mr. Nkondo James, you can unmute.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Nkondo.
Good evening, brother.
Good evening to you.
I'm happy to hear from you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work well done. My concern is about these generic skills. Most of them are very easy to handle, but the challenge is the ICT component. Like in the school, we have over 100 computers, but still, most of the streams in my school, there are 120. When you give them like an activity to process anything, maybe word processing, geographic work, they are blocked. There is a struggle, there is fight within the system. I don't know whether it is the case with other people, but they just tell you the computers are for those doing the computer only. So it is a challenge. Secondly, still, whereas I was checking in the syllabus, it's everywhere almost at the footnote down there, everything, ICT support. And I don't know if in the urban area will suffer. What about in the rural area? I hope there is a problem down there. And then another concern, maybe to the rest of the colleagues, is if you check in our syllabus, the things are there where you need maybe computation, where you need ICT. It's all about to have this syllabus as a Bible for ourselves.
True.
And not soft copy. Soft copy is misleading. You may even forget to look at it. We should have hard copies and highlight those areas. So that's my concern there. But thank you very much. And everyone, let's have this syllabus with us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Actually, when you interpret that, when you open the syllabus book, they have everything. They will guide you why you need to use a computer, the kind of data that they have to use a computer. And when you critically look at them, they actually fit our skill steps per class. They fit there. Then, yes, we have challenges to computer access in many schools. Actually, in many schools, even the schools that you think have all the resources, if you have a class which has over 600 students, I don't think that it is a school which has over 1,000 computers in Uganda. I doubt if it is there. Maybe you can challenge me on that. So yes, it is still a challenge, but nevertheless, for us, let us try to be creative. Sometimes I'm even forced to give my laptop to the learners to execute some assignments because of the challenges that they have. So if you have a computer or if you have a phone, you can sometimes controllably surrender it to the learners, that at least they can acquire that skills, that they can produce what you actually want them to produce. So I think we can now get about 3 questions. Then we get closing remarks. Then we end the session. So Otalo Emmanuel will come first, then Edison Obode, then lastly it will be Dennis. Yes, Mr. Otalo Emmanuel.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Talo Emmanuel, we have lost you. Okay.
You talked about the scenario questions, and yet we're not sure. Pardon?
I beg your pardon.
You said about scenario questions. Yes?
Yes.
But then you are again telling us that we don't know yet the format of the examinations that UNEP is going to set. But we have here almost in every other workshop, they're talking about two scenario questions. I don't know how this one can be addressed because most people are emphasizing scenario-based questions, and yet the official communication has not been made yet. Then the other one is about the A-level curriculum or syllabus. Is it also going to be, do we think that it can also be competency-based, since now we now have the first competence-based curriculum pioneers sitting this year. Now, do we expect a draft of a competence-based A-level curriculum as well? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Talo. Now, the first one, I can speak with authority that
yes,
questions in the end of cycle exams are all scenario-based. So that one, pick it from me. They are scenario-based. That is why even I said that even in classes when you're teaching learners, design activities which are scenario-based so that they can know what a scenario-based activity is. Even when you look at my the learning activities in the sample lesson plans that I have shown you here, they have scenarios. So everything is scenario-based, and even that is how you ought to teach. Then A-level syllabus, A-level curriculum, there is a team of teachers and the NCDC staff that is actually drafting it. They are making that team is there, and there is progress of designing a new A-level curriculum. I am not sure of contents in there because I'm not part of it, but at least I've interacted with the people who are doing it, but they are working on a new A-level curriculum. Okay, we can now listen from the Edison Oboide. Edison Oboide. Edison, can you unmute yourself? Okay, meanwhile, let us hear from Dennis.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Arthur. We really honor you and appreciate your sacrifice in this. I'm a teacher trainee. I was blessed we attended one of your workshops here at Makerere.
Okay,
yes. So I'm asking, like, as teacher trainees, we have found the challenge that the training we are receiving as if
Edison, you're breaking.
Hello.
Yes, Edison, you can ask again. You were breaking. We didn't get the question.
curriculum.
Thank you so much
sorry,
for
sorry,
your
sorry.
insightful lecture.
Kindly, Edison, sorry. You'll come after. Dennis was still submitting. Sorry for that confusion. Dennis, you can first complete your question.
Yeah, so I'm just requesting for how we can get those resources, like the soft copies of that work of the new curriculum, and even this work that you have shared. I don't know how we can get those work that work such that we are acquainted with what we are going to teach. Kindly, thank you very much.
Okay, to equip yourself, get a copy of the syllabus book. Get a copy of the syllabus book. Personal copy. If you can't, you can get the one you photocopy. You build your personal copy. Sharing our presentation, this one, you'll go to YouTube. You just type in holistic e-learning platform. You'll access all these video recordings, including today's recordings and our previous sessions. Thank you. Yes, Edison now. Lastly, Edison. Edison, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, Edison.
Thank you so much with the program you're handling, actually.
You're welcome.
I'm so happy with this new curriculum. But however, government used to organize workshops mostly at the beginning of the term, like for now. But now schools are almost starting because teachers are still having a challenge in the new curriculum, especially practicals, biology practicals, physics practicals, and chemistry. And when the books have not been showed us what to teach. Are you seeing that? How is the government planning for this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Still, though I may not be in position to talk on behalf of the government, and nor do I even know what they are up to. But nevertheless, us as teachers, we have to be creative. There are gaps, there are challenges, and they are open, they are well known, and we can't keep on complaining, and we can't also say we're not going to do anything. At the end of the day, it goes back to us. But at least we have the syllabus book. So for you as a teacher, if you look at the syllabus book in senior 4, if you can interpret the learning outcomes, then you can develop the content that you think learners need to be able to show that they have attained those learning outcomes as we wait for what comes from the government.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Kaziba, I think we have come to the conclusion that I've not checked through the chat.
I think in the chat, Teacher Arthur, we are fine.
Okay.
Maybe there are a few things I'll talk about them maybe before we go. But the first one, I want to assure that for the primary teachers, we had a session. We had a session last year on the 26th to 27th at Munyonyo, and First Lady tasked the primary team to start on the reviewing of the primary curriculum. So they are on that task, and soon, very soon, they'll be also working to see that it fits into the competence-based curriculum. So the primary thing has started. So it is taking shape, and you'll be getting information. Then Dennis, for the teacher trainees at Makerere, you are going to get in touch. I'm going to get in touch with Dr. Alfred Buruma, and then we shall share with you all the resources you need, because I understand this term, in June, many of you are going into schools for observations, but we shall share all the materials. You can get in contact with me, and probably I share with you the materials, and then you can share as well with other members. Then I also want you, dear teachers, to take note that marks or the scores that these students get momentarily. They are for a short term. You can only use it for a short term. But the generic skills that these children gain from the schools, they can help them stand out in a crowd and take them a long way. So someone who has those skills is far much better than someone who has just aimed at the marks. Marks, you can use them to get a job, but to keep you at that job, you need the skills. So these skills are very, very vital for our children. Therefore, try your best to ensure that at least there is a skill that you integrate into your lessons. So it will be very helpful for the children, because I think you have noticed we have very many bright children who have scored 4, but they have failed to be successful in their careers because they lack the skills. They have the marks, good grades, but they cannot. And even if you look outside, you will notice that the people who are leading us in the different spheres, necessarily they don't have the good marks, but they have the skills and they are able now to solve the problems. So please make sure you emphasize those skills to the learners. Do your best to ensure that at least every child is unique and there is some skill he or she can attain to have a better future. I want also to thank Teacher Arthur very much. Teacher Arthur, thank you so much for sacrificing. Thank you so much for taking us through this session. I'm really very sure people have regained a lot from this session. I've also learned a lot, and I want to thank you so much. Thank you very much. I want also to thank the teachers who have been on the call. Thank you so, so much. And I want to promise that we are going to have very many sessions on the new curriculum after the term has started. Yes, when the term starts, we shall be calling you at least every month. We shall have on the different topics. I think like someone has mentioned, we need a mindset kind of session. So I'm going to, I think I'll look out for any facilitator who can help us have that mindset change such that at least we can have our teachers attain a positive mindset. And then we shall have project, we shall have assessments and so on. So we shall have very many sessions in our next season that is coming on. Then, okay. I think that is it. So I want to, I don't know, maybe Teacher, you have something before we close.
No, I think I've said whatever I had to say. So I think we can close.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, members, you can unmute and say bye-bye to everyone and say we meet for the next session.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.